Welcome to Turmeric and Tequila with your host, Kristen Olson. Questioning a better way, one gracefully disruptive conversation at a time.
Welcome to Turmeric and Tequila. I'm super excited to be here today. We've got long time lacrosse and now fitness family in the house. And we are going to be talking about many things around intuitive weight loss and just general good life decisions. Before we jump in, I want to give a quick shout out to our sponsors, Lux Neuro, offering neurofeedback and counseling where your heart and mind align. For more information about what neurofeedback can do for you, listen to the neurofeedback stories of transformation in the middle of this podcast. Neurofeedback effectively treats everything from insomnia, anxiety, depression, trauma, ADHD, and much more. Optimize your brain. Check them out at luxneuro.com. And I got to give a special shout out to Declan James Watches, Swiss watches assembled here in Colorado, founded by a Navy SEAL, and 10% of all sales go back to the Navy SEAL Foundation. So we have some amazing local humans doing amazing local things. So please go check out both of them. But without further ado, Ellie Morris, welcome to Turmeric and Tequila.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
Yes, we're going to jump in. We've got, like I said, some lax history. I think of like 20 years. Does that sound right?
Yeah, I think so. I think you probably started coaching me back then. And then eventually we got to play a little 3v3.
Yeah. It's so wild because we're both Colorado kids navigating Colorado Lacrosse 20 whatever years ago. And then we both went out east to play. So we were kind of like fish out of water, not only because we were like Midwesterners out east, but like the level of lacrosse was just a different level out east.
For sure. Yeah,
it was awakening. Well, so we'll talk about the sports. I don't always read bios, but I do want to read Ellie's because it's so beautiful how her personal journey has inspired her professional one. So I think it's important we dig into the details. Ellie Morris is a stay-at-home mom of 3 kids, 5 chickens, and a puppy. Her professional career took her from studying applied math at Columbia University to working on Wall Street for the New York Stock Exchange and finally becoming a software engineer. Life happened along the way, and in September 2019, she became a stay-at-home mom and lasted 2 weeks before starting her own business as a wellness entrepreneur. Today, Ellie is a health coach with a heart for simple, intuitive weight loss. She integrates helping people deepen their body awareness with brain-based coaching and simple daily habits to disrupt the diet industry. When she's not working or chasing kids, she loves skiing, yoga, baking, and coffee, and has never met a taco she didn't like. Ellie, let's go. Covering all the bases.
Yeah, I know. And it's like so cool to get to hear that all repeated back to me. So thanks for reading that. Yeah.
It is fun. I always ask people, I'm like, hi, because I don't always read them, but I do more and more just because I do think it's a good exercise. Because we get so wrapped up in the daily, like, I got to do more, I do this. And then when you hear that back, you're like, oh, I guess I've done a lot. Like we've done something, we've still got a lot of life to go, but like we've checked some boxes. We've got some accomplishments in. And your journey in particular, I think is really like beautiful and harmonious. We have talked on many times about the importance of athletics. I always talk about life skills through sports and how critical it is. And being an athlete, I know is a huge piece of your life. We're both competitors. We're very driven and type A. We are certainly like mission driven humans and high achievers. And there's also like a balance and almost, I don't want to say a detriment, but there is an awareness you have to have when you're that kind of human in maintaining balance. Because usually if you hit the gas on something, you hit the gas on everything. Totally. So before we get into like deep convo, as we always start on Turmeric and Tequila, give us a little background on like young Ellie, maybe even pre like lacrosse days.
Yeah. So I am from Denver, Colorado. I'm the oldest of 4. I've got 3 younger brothers, and I know that you do too, and that your position in your family shaped a lot for you. So at our house, we grew up in kind of chaos. We had this teeny split level house. We had 3 horses, 4 dogs, 2 cats, a hedgehog, and a gecko.
Nice.
And it was just like really fun, really busy. I will say there was not a lot of just like being or resting. It was always like, you've got to hug 1 animal a day. We've got to pick up around the yard, practice sports, go to sports. So there wasn't a lot of time to being, which I think, fast forward to what you said, that has really impacted my ability to be able to slow down today, mixed with some other things. But I think that's really a big one. But we had a lot of fun. We were super busy. And so that's kind of the things that stick out the most.
The young version. I love it. Well, when you are the oldest of 4 is a wild thing. And the oldest of having 3 siblings of the opposite sex to you, I think is also really interesting. Were you glad you were the oldest, or would you rather been like the middle or the youngest?
I think at different times in my life, I am glad that I was the oldest or am the oldest. In the moment, I didn't like it. And I felt like I was forced to grow up really quickly.
Yeah.
Like my mom would leave us. It was she was a 90s mom. So she would leave us for an hour or two, and we had an answering phone, and she told me, don't answer the door, don't answer the phone, just pick it up if you hear my voice in the answering machine. And so I think there just was a lot of early responsibility placed on me. And so being a girl and the oldest, I do feel like I matured really fast, which at certain points, like in high school, I was kind of mad about that.
Okay.
When my friends were okay, like going and having fun and being wild, I was like, no, I have a lot of responsibility. So
yeah, that's interesting. I think for me, it was more of like a safety factor. Like my brothers I was bigger, I think, until like probably middle school, high school-ish. They weren't even that big in high school. They're all huge now, but I was bigger, and it was kind of like just this rough and tumble, like high energy situation that I thought was a lot. And like, I'm tough, like I'm an athlete, but I'm also like, I don't like being roughed around and like, hit and punched, and like, just like aggressiveness in general. I'm here for the peace, like you, where it's like, okay, like, yeah, boundaries.
I know. Like, can you guys just relax?
It's so real.
Yeah. Well, so my brothers, I mean, I think part of my story too is developing really early. So like I started puberty maybe at age 10. And
oh, wow. Okay.
Those just are late. And so my brothers are now 6'5", 6'4", and 6 feet tall. And two of them played football. The biggest one was a tennis player. And so I think there was that, like, I felt like I stood out from them because I also just changed early, and I've been the same size since 7th grade now.
Wow.
So yes, it's so interesting.
That's interesting. I didn't get my period till I was like 15, but when I did, I was devastated. And I remember I didn't want them to know, like, I didn't want to be like, I never wanted to be like the fourth boy, but I didn't want them to know like anything that like about puberty or changing or bras or like any of that. I was horrified.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was a journey in itself. Well, tell me about the sport thing, because I do think that that's where a lot of leadership, apart from being the oldest of the pack, I think a lot of the leadership skills and where my entrepreneurial insights and motivation really do come from my early athletic days, through college and all the way through my 30s into the CrossFit Games. But those skills that you're not even consciously learning around discipline, drive, holding yourself accountable, all of these things like really allowed me to be an entrepreneur early. And I didn't realize that these are some of the challenges that maybe that non-athletes or people that weren't committed to theater or something have. But do you feel like a lot of your sports skills really help design you to be a successful entrepreneur?
Yeah, I've never been asked that before, and it's not something that I think about that often. But what was starting to come to mind as you were talking is I think it was maybe in 8th grade, my mom took me on my first college trip to visit a cousin at school at Dartmouth up in Hanover. And I just got complete tunnel vision that that's where I was going to go. Okay. And this is kind of my entrepreneurial process now that I follow, is like holding on to a vision and then working towards that. And back then I didn't know how to hold it loosely, and I wasn't open to something different happening. But so I remember going to Hilton Head to visit my grandparents. We went every summer. And when I started to develop that vision of playing D1 lacrosse in college, I was running sprints on the golf green, like on the golf course, and it shaped how I did everything. It motivated me to study, and it really instilled the qualities of grit and discipline and just continuing to show up, because I really believed in that vision just wholeheartedly. I will say I ended up being recruited by Columbia and Stanford. I took my official visits there, and I really still wanted Dartmouth. At the time, they were a top 5 program, and I was not a top 5 D1 player. And so they said they didn't have room for me. And long story short, I ended up playing at Columbia, which was a perfect fit for me academically. But there's more to my story there that we can get into or not. But I think when I look back, I can tell that it all worked out how it was supposed to. But in the moment, I was really devastated. And today, when I hold on to business goals, I really am able to hold them loosely and just say, this is what I want. But, universe, God, however people connect, whatever is meant to be or better for what's best for the common good is what I want. So there's like that open to something else coming through.
I think that's so well said. And the irony is the beautiful side of sports or just being committed to something bigger than yourself that you're training for. You got to have that goal. You got to have that vision. And as you get older, you know that it oftentimes doesn't work out the way you thought. Like it wasn't, being a D1 athlete is a big deal. Being a D1 athlete at the exact school, at the exact program you want is pretty tough. And like a lot has to align for things like that to happen. So you learn quickly that as you have one goal in mind and you're shooting for, there's so many other lessons going on around that you actually need versus what you think you want. And this is something I've had to learn, in my teens and 20s as an athlete, and then now in 30s and 40s as an adult, of like, yes, have your vision, have your goal. But I love you said hold it loosely, because things can shape shift. And oftentimes it is for your benefit. We just think, as competitors, like, oh, if it didn't end this way, then it's a failure. And it's not at all. That's just how we're trained to think as athletes.
Yeah. Exactly.
Well, and Stanford, Columbia, none of these are a loss. Like there's no way things can go really that wrong. But I know that when you're disciplined and you have a goal, and like you're going home to tell all your friends and they're going to their places, and like you're not doing what you set out to do, it's a big deal, especially as a young person. And there's a lot we've talked about with, but the athletes, there's a lot of pressure. I look back at my Division I career and I was like, gosh, we were volunteering and doing all these things. And it was like a full-time job as a 0-year-old, in my opinion, to really just like be part of things, keep up on it. Like it's a lot. And we didn't really have a lot of conversation around mental health. We didn't have a lot of conversation around like diet and fuel and training. We sort of did. And George Mason was a top 20 program. I think we were 10th when I went in. And we still didn't have access around these other conversations in depth. Did you have anything like at that age, like around mental health, nutrition, or anything at these top programs, top universities that was advising you in a certain direction?
No. And I feel like that's really what was missing. I really think that the combination of developing early, and so just feeling like big in my body or just a little insecure in my body, was really exacerbated by feelings of overwhelm. I took 5 AP classes, I think, junior year, or like I took a big heavy load because I was going to go to Dartmouth. Yeah. So I was like, let's get all the advanced courses I can in here. And so no, there was no, I wrote in my email recently, I said, when I was 17, I walked into Weight Watchers for the very first time. And I was a size 8 athletic build, not overweight at all. But I thought that if I could control my size a little tighter, that I would feel happier and more confident in my skin. And I'm sure that the lady there was like, who is this person? And why did her parents let her come here? But she just was kind and welcoming and accepted me and had me sit in the circle with all these people who really did have a lot to lose and change. And honestly, what I really needed was for someone to say, you need to go home. And if someone had just asked, like, how are you feeling, or how are you doing, or just what's beneath the surface, I think it would have been a completely different experience, or just space to kind of breathe. But I didn't get that in college either. And I could have really used someone to just say like, hey, how are you doing? Yeah. Like, how are you feeling? What are you eating? How's your sleep? how are your daily healthy habits? And so, yeah. And I think that there's a lot more of that available today, but that's what really drives me today, to help people embrace just general healthy living and separating stress out from our actions before taking a look at a Band-Aid solution like a diet.
Amen. That's wild. So what's really interesting is like, I think these conversations are really important for all people, but I always talk about our young people, and particularly as females and as female athletes, you're not going to just sit and wait for something to happen. You're going to go do something about it. And that action step is really a key piece. Like that's actually pretty impressive. Now hear me out in this statement, that you took initiative to go do something so vulnerably. And on the flip side, it's also really tragic that at 17, you're not even an adult, you're seeking out these like weight loss solutions. So I think there's kids like you and myself where we're going to do something about it. And then kids on the other side that sit at home, internalize everything and don't do anything. But then in turn, they're even harder on themselves, and it kind of like spins even further. So it's pretty wild that you had, I want to say the audacity, but in a good way, to go into this adult situation and say, hey, I want to make changes. Do you have to be 18 to go into Weight Watchers?
Well, maybe I was 18.
Okay. Even that though is kind of aggressive.
What's that?
I said even 18, like you're young, man.
It was definitely high school. And I remember getting goldfish out and counting out whatever 2 points worth of goldfish was.
Wow.
And I'm pretty sure my parents were like, what are you doing? But they also didn't know what, they're viewing me from the lens of their own stories that they have around food, body, and weight. And they tried to be really supportive and just guide me through things. So I think, we didn't talk about emotions even in our own household back then. So I don't think they even knew to say, hey, where is this coming from?
Right. And I think it's so important that you share that it's, a two-parent household. Education, athletic, like there's all these things that you'd stereotype that, oh, you would know better, you have access or this and that, where these common questions and these afflictions are afflicting people at all levels, all socioeconomic statuses. It doesn't matter what it is. These are just like human problems that we have to get better at and hold that space to have these deeper conversations. Because if this is happening at 17 or 18 for you or I, and now our young humans have social media, so they're seeing diet culture, as soon as they get a cell phone. So maybe that's 7, 8, 9 years old, or maybe sooner. It's really an important conversation of, not only do you love the way you look, but like you said, how are you actually feeling? What's going on right now? Like just holding space to say what's actually happening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
It's a wild journey. Okay, so I want to get into the college piece of it because I feel like this is, as you told me before, where I think the mental health journey really started to take a turn. And again, I think you were actually ahead of the game. I think most of us that were in it didn't really start questioning. Like I ate healthy and whatnot through school and did my training, on the weekends or breaks or whatever. But I didn't really start getting into like diet and sleep and everything until I started CrossFit. So that was like late 20s, early 30s. And then I really started to be like, oh, okay, now we'll check in on mental health. But I feel like you started to address this like during college. Do you want to share any piece of that journey?
Yeah. I don't think I embraced healthy habits in college. I think I was still, it started with Weight Watchers, but my next steps were South Beach, weird African diet pills, French women don't get fat came out. And so I pretended to be French and made weird soup.
Oh my God. Okay.
Calorie counting, it just kind of kept going on and on. But I finally, after year one of playing lacrosse, I got stress fractures in both shins. And so I ended up quitting. I was the 11th girl in one season to quit. And so it was a really big turnover year for us anyway. And after I did that, I went back to Columbia, and I think I just didn't know how to get myself back. I gained the freshman 15 to 20 pounds from, a combination of not knowing how to fuel myself after big workouts, having a lot of fun in New York City and going out with friends, and, bars there are open till 4 a.m. So it just got really out of whack. But so I had sophomore year there, and then junior fall, I just finally couldn't take it anymore of living in this way of really disordered eating patterns. And so I called my parents and I just said, hey, I need really to get out. And so they helped me make changes. I took a year away on a medical leave, and it just kind of gave me space to reflect or change scenery, to notice, okay, the problem's not Columbia, the problem's not lacrosse, like the problem is really internal and my own mental health journey. And so I spent that year away in 2008. And then I came back in 2009 in January. And when I showed back up and moved my stuff in, I went in to register for classes, and they were like, okay, so did you get therapy, or like, how did you treat yourself on this medical leave? My dad had been out of work that year, and they kept telling me, you just need to lose your freshman 15, like you just need to lose 15 pounds and you'll be better. And so I still got this missed message while I was out of town.
Wait, the university said that?
No, my parents.
Oh,
so
gotcha.
So they couldn't afford therapy out of pocket back then. And my dad was out of work, so insurance was kind of wacky. So when I got back, they said, okay, you can stay because you're here, but we need you to meet with a therapist on campus. And I met with her once, and I told her when I sat there, I said, I'm fine. I just need to lose 15 pounds and I'll be good. She was like, okay, can I just ask you a couple questions? And, then the floodgates opened, and I remember at the end of the meeting being like, can I see you again?
Oh, yeah.
And then we just started that. That was really the beginning of my like healing journey and exploring what life means to me, all the questions, and separating out physical hunger, emotional hunger, and spiritual hunger.
That's amazing. So finding the right therapist is pretty tough, especially if you're mission driven, human. You got to find someone that's really aligned with your values and your vision, and understanding which, your goals are. Was this person like instrumental in your journey? Like, do you feel like you lucked out having landed here?
Totally. And I worked with her for a full year at Columbia, graduated, in fall of 2009. And then I kept working with her when I was working on Wall Street,
Okay.
which was amazing. So yeah.
That's so again, I tore my ACL my sophomore year, and so there's so many lessons off that. We won't digress there. But again, I went to lacrosse. I went to George Mason to play lacrosse school with the good business program, whatever. Lacrosse was the thing, but then within that, I learned so many things. It's almost like lacrosse was the rocket ship that took you there to get to like this therapist that then pivots you.
Totally.
Because now the most beautiful piece is you had this really unintentional mentor, which is so it's amazing. If you find one randomly at school that you just happen to talk to, you could interview 100 therapists and not find the right one. If you land on the right one, there's something about that God, universe, Madonna that lines you up, because now your professional life is really led or at least begun or inspired by your personal journey. And there's nothing really more authentic than that.
Oh, totally. And I remember freaking out about something, and I called her from Columbus Circle, just in New York at the bottom of Central Park. And I remember being on the phone with her, just kind of in panic mode. And she was like, I think you need to go to yoga. And I was already a yogi. And I said, okay, I can go, but I really don't want there to be mirrors there. Like, I don't want to look at myself right now. And I remember her saying, there's no mirrors at this studio, just go. And so she introduced me to this studio in New York that was so amazing. And I ended up getting my 200 and 300 hour teacher training certifications there, just from this therapist who prompted me to go try out a class because there weren't mirrors there. So I could feel good just about being really inward versus, worrying too much about how I looked on the outside. So yeah, it was amazing.
And I really, as much as you want to go into this, I'd encourage you to share, only because I think people will look at you and be like, this human is successful. She's fit. She's good looking. She's got it all together, this and that. People always stereotype that like, oh, this person, your life's perfect. Everything's good. And then on the inside, no one ever really knows what battles we're fighting or what we're going through. And it sounds like in the heat of this, like you were in a really, really tough spot.
Yeah. Well, so in 2007, before going away, I remember being like at my lowest of low points there. And I don't think that my parents quite understood. I didn't feel like anyone understood how bad I was feeling. And so, yeah, there was definitely a moment that I like looked at the subway tracks and was like thinking about jumping. And I felt like I knew I wasn't going to, or that I didn't actually want to do that. But I stood at the very edge and just thought, what if I did that? And then I called I think my mom had set me up with a therapist. So I remember going in and telling her that I had that experience. And then from there, after that appointment, I called my mom and I said, just so you know, I just told this therapist that what I was thinking about doing. And my mom at that point, she was like, okay, that's it. Like, that was the moment where my parents were like, we are going to get you back to Colorado for the year. And my dad, I'm so glad that he was the one that thought to set me up on a medical leave so that I had the opportunity to go back if I wanted to, which I'm so glad that he did, because 2 weeks of being away, I knew that that's where I wanted to be, was in New York City and finishing out there. And so yeah, it all worked out as well as it could, but it definitely took getting to some low places.
Yeah. Do you have, thank you for sharing that. Cause again, I think it's so important. People and say like, oh, it's bad, or like, I'm not good. And it could be like, no, it's actually like, I'm really not good. Sometimes that's hard to say. And it's also hard to hear. Do you having lived that experience, do you have any good advice for someone that's in your position that is really seeking help? And then for someone that is around someone like you, how they can show up better to support that person?
Yeah, I think in the moment, if like I knew that that something was off and that life was meant to be like more, that there had been people in my life who felt really calm and confident to me, and just like little lights planted around. And I knew that I wanted that and that I was capable of living in that way. And so I think that misalignment was what drove me to keep seeking. Mm-hmm. And so I would just say, if you're someone that's like really struggling with your mental health and you know that you're meant for more and to experience more, to keep knocking and to just trust that you will find and be guided towards solutions to help you forward. Obviously, if you're in like a really low place, there's definitely resources out there to, I didn't have to like call a number, or like, I felt like I had support built in for me to go vent to.
Yeah.
But if you don't have that, we could probably put something in the show notes of just like,
Sure.
call this line or, and then if you are trying to support someone in your life that's going through a hard season, trusting that you just being present with them is enough to take a load out of their, quote unquote backpack every day. That you just listening and being space for them to get things out is really, really helpful. And so yeah, I think those would be my two kind of pieces of advice for that.
That's great. Yeah, I think as someone in it, I do think reaching out, but someone around it, I've learned time and time again, just being there is enough, and not always having to have a solution, just straight up showing up and being there and kind of just sitting in it with them. Tends to be enough. And then I would always say, go towards your professional situation, but all things in steps, not strides.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Well, so on the bright side, you did make it through. And that's why I think these harder days can always make us even more phenomenal and even more authentic coaches, and having the ability, when you have those dark days, you can relate to people on such a deeper level, especially if they've had a similar experience. But as you had kiddos, you became a mom, you got chickens and dog and all these things, what inspired you in your health and wellness entrepreneurship journey? And tell us about what you're doing now.
Hi there. This is Laura Mahoney from Lux Neuro, Neurofeedback and Counseling. We are bringing you stories of transformation each podcast. Imagine how we can transform your life. Grief transformation. I love my mom, and I miss her so much. She died over a decade ago. My fondest memories were of her at Christmas time. She loved the season and especially loved her Christmas tree. Since she died, Christmas for me has been hard. Each year I waited till the last minute to put up my own Christmas tree, and then immediately took it down the night of Christmas. This was my experience for years. Last year, I started neurofeedback. I have had incredible changes, from sleeping to no anxiety nor depression. What was unexpected was the resolution of my seasonal grief cycle. It just disappeared. I couldn't believe it. It was 2 weeks into January when I realized my tree was still up, and I was happy. I now can create joyful memories at Christmas instead of feeling dread, all thanks to neurofeedback.
Yeah. So along the way of having kids, I became a software engineer, and I thought that was really like the perfect setup for me to be able to work and still maintain a balance with motherhood. And it just ended up after baby number 2 to be way too much. And I recently started doing some processing on viewing my kids as little blockers between me and my goals. And I've been doing a lot of work on viewing them as motherhood fueling my journey, and really being the fuel for entrepreneurship, which turned out to be the case, because they're actually the reasons that I stopped software was to rebalance our family. And I lasted about 2 weeks before starting my own business. And so when I look back, I'm like, oh yeah, actually I started my own simple wellness business because I became a mom. And so they really fueled that change to help me pivot more back towards purpose. So my business started out with offering fruits and vegetables in a capsule or chewable, and just super, super simple, connected with other moms, and had a lot of fun doing that. And what happened was I had no sales, marketing, or leadership skills. And I became extremely frustrated that it felt like there was a ceiling over my abilities there. And being someone who's just always been able to figure things out, I was introduced to coaching about 2.5 years into that business. And as soon as I found coaching, everything, like all the pieces clicked together, of having offered a healthy lifestyle to moms and kids with plant powders, to my yoga school and 500-hour training, to doing my own coaching with people to help me learn sales and the value of being more service-oriented versus goal-oriented. So through that, my business exploded. My capacity for just really being a mission-driven human really opened up, and I really embraced that. And I started about a year ago thinking and working with my own one-on-one coach about talking more about weight loss online and offering a deeper more connected offering to help people free themselves from the chains of food, diet, and body. So I will say that took about a year of me opening up, and again, similar to going to Dartmouth, like releasing a vision that I had for my business and instead opening up to a new one, which actually still included the first vision. So long story short, this spring I hired a business marketing expert, and she helped me really flip my whole business over. And she said, what do you think about becoming a health coach? Because you've got all these skills, all this experience. I said, that's what I want to do. I just don't know how. And so all the pieces kind of fit together. And now, today I'm a health coach and help people lose weight without losing their minds.
I love it. And that's so needed. And again, there's nothing that you are really designed better for at this point. Like you look at this unintentional journey, like here we are, intentional academic, lacrosse, and we're doing this. And meanwhile, you're being educated and equipped and provided experience to do what you're actually meant to do versus what you thought you were supposed to do. And how much more in alignment are you right now than how you could have actually planned?
Yeah, it's unbelievable. And my business is growing really fast, and friends that I've had or that have followed me online for a long time, because I'm one of the people that I love being a content creator and showing up online. And some of my friends are like, oh my gosh, I feel like you've had just this overnight success. And I'm like, this is like 20 years in the making.
Totally.
And not overnight success, but
yeah. Well, and again, like how people can stereotype things of how you think things are one thing and then they're just totally another. It's wild. And I hope anyone out there seeking any sort of leadership coaching, whatnot, ask questions. Like, have you lived this? Have you been through this? You're not going to go to a lacrosse camp when all the teachers teach rugby. So you've got to like start asking questions, be a conscious consumer, and as a leader, take really intentional responsibility around what you're doing, what you're coaching, and your own experience. And you have all these great academic tools and accolades and degrees and things, but really, in my opinion, your biggest asset is your own experience, because you've literally walked in it, and you can hold the hands of anybody that's in it or going through it or has gone through it in the past so authentically.
Yeah. For sure. And I find things that my clients are afraid of, so I work with a hunger scale and helping people just eat when they're hungry, stop when they're 75, 80% full. And then we go through all the reasons that won't work for them, because usually people have built up a lot of stereotypes or subconscious thoughts, that limiting beliefs against why something like that wouldn't work. It's really interesting, because just holding someone's hand when they're saying, I'm afraid that I might be hungry in 2 hours, sitting with them and going through those fears and worries and anxieties, and offering, you can have a snack. Food, we're living in a place where there can be in a lot of our lives food always available, but people are really afraid from the messaging we grew up with about Clean Plate Club and, going to a buffet, and you got to get your money's worth, or, whatever the case may be. But it's really an honor to get to sit with someone and hear those dark thoughts in the back of their minds that hold them back from operating in a way that just feels really good. And the results all come as a byproduct of showing up for yourself and really tuning in and coming more into alignment.
I love it. Because so many times it's not about food or whatever you're addressing. It's not about the actual thing. It's about something else that you're dealing with from within. Why don't you give us, because weight loss is such a popular topic nowadays, and I think that's almost like a trigger word, like influencer, like there's some negative connotation. And at different points in my journey, I don't know if I talked about this on the mic, but I took diet pills in high school at one point because I'd come home from California with my cousins and like they were doing it. And I was always confident in myself because I was an athlete. I certainly had body insecurities as a high school kid, and I wanted to be thinner or whatever, or too muscular, too something. And then in college, I became more relaxed around it just because I had sports, and you couldn't not eat because you wouldn't play. Like there was just like, you had to fuel to play. And then CrossFit's when I really got comfortable in my body, and you're even more muscular. So like there's society, we've changed in the past 10 years, but even, early 2000s or 2010-ish, it was still kind of not cool for women to be buff, so there was always something. I was too big or too muscular or too small for something. And I even remember my CrossFit coach, again, I was like 30 something, being like, because CrossFitters, if you don't know, they're traditionally pretty ripped and jacked and like that it's celebrated muscle within the community, maybe outside of its judged. But I was lean for me, but I was never ripped, and I'm still not. That's just not my body type. But I remember my coach specifically saying, I was like, should I change my nutrition? Like, I'm going to the games, I'm pretty good. He's like, well, they all look like that for a reason. And I was like, damn, I'm like, if I wasn't 30 something and secure, I'm like, that might totally derail me. Like, I remember I didn't count my macros on purpose. I didn't go that way because I was so like, F you, I'm not doing this, and didn't count my macros actually till a couple years ago, which was highly effective. But it was this weird space. So like any environment you're in could push you in any which direction. Like something's always not enough or always wanting to change. And it's really about knowing yourself and knowing where you stand. So as these things come in, you're not washed away unknowingly. And it can happen at 15, 16, 20, 45. Like we're still in a tough environment. So it's really, this conscious conversation is really critical. Can you share with us some of your like methodology, or like if someone's looking to align or they're wondering if you're their coach, like tell us a little bit how you do things.
Yeah. So the way that I like to help people is through kind of 3 pillars. And the first one is body awareness. So in all my sessions, I like to do a little bit of mindful breathing and just really like getting grounded, getting like some people, well, a lot of people, I think we live in our heads, and I definitely was that way. And so learning to like sit in your feelings and the way that it actually feels to, wave your arms or move your legs down the street or, whatever it is that you're doing, but really inhabiting your body. So we get to practice that a little bit. And that comes into noticing your hunger cues. So being able to tune in and notice like, okay, am I really hungry, or what am I hungry for right now? Is it something emotional related? Is it human connection, or do I actually need something to fuel me right now? So that's the first one. The second one is the coaching. And so working with someone to come up with, not come up with, but to really be present and see what comes up for them in terms of like, what are the top 3 feelings you felt for over the last 3 days? Or how are you feeling about your food logging? Because I have people log not points, calories, amounts, things like that, but we're logging, this is what I ate. This is the hunger that I sat down with, and here's where I finished. So really looking at what does this person's brain offer them about the way that they're eating, and snacks, are we eating enough? Are they weird intervals? There's so much there to take a look at. So we get to weed through all the sneaky thoughts that are in the back of people's minds that they don't think are actually playing a role in how they show up and act as a human, but have huge impacts. And so that's that. And one interesting stat about thought work is humans have anywhere from, I think it's 15,000 to 60,000 thoughts a day. Thank God most of them are subconscious, but I think the stat is more than 85% are negative and 90% are on repeat from yesterday. Wow. And so we're really wired with the odds against us if we don't become intentional to take a look at our thoughts and be more mindful about them. So that one I'm clearly very passionate about. And then the third pillar is your daily habits. So I like to help people take a look at how much water are you drinking, sleep, connection, human connection, managing stress, what you're eating, and movement. And so we can take a look at all of those areas. I really believe that the what you're eating is important, but we are all multi-dimensional people with very different needs. And so I think the more real foods we can eat, the better, but sprinkled in with joy and there are things that our soul is hungry for, which is like, eating out at events or family gatherings or recipes handed down, or, those things are just as important as getting the right macros and micros in your diet. So that's kind of my process.
I love it. How do you initially, kind of what I started talking about earlier, but going back to in weight loss, influencer, some of these can have like negative connotation. And I consciously have to say like influencer, I take a jab at it because it is kind of become a thing now, but really influencer is like an inspirer. It's a leader in the community. There's really nothing wrong with it. It's just hard to embrace. How do you navigate around just the term weight loss? Because I feel like people don't even want to say like, I want to lose weight, even though that's the goal. Like as an athlete, there was times I was trying to lose weight because I had to do a lot of gymnastics. It wasn't even about how I looked. I just need to get lighter so I could functionally move specific for this event. So there was different reasons why I was doing something, but weight loss was always a tricky conversation in general.
That's a really good question. And it is something that I've had a lot of struggle with. And I think that's what delayed me from even starting my business. But I think the way that I've thought about it is that there's diet culture, there's body positivity, which to me is embracing where you are. And also I think we need to embrace where we are, but if you don't love where you are, or you feel like you're not at your healthiest self, that it's okay to want to lose weight, and that there's not shame in wanting to do that in a healthy, sustainable way. And so I think that that's being a place where someone feels safe to want to be their most vibrant self, and love the way that they look and feel, so that they can show up in the world as their best self and do their things that they're meant to do. Like that to me is what really lights me up with this industry. And I think as a content creator, like sometimes the fears that I do have are definitely being misunderstood.
Yeah.
And that's just going to happen to some degree. But sometimes when those fears come up, I'll just directly address them in my content. And I have a friend who's a money coach, and she wrote something that was like, as a money coach, my number one goal is not to help you get rich. And me as a weight loss coach, it's like my number one goal is not to help you get skinny. It's much more about the whole human that you are being. Yes, my marketing is probably drawing people in who are like, hey, a way to lose weight that's not a diet, where I won't need to diet again or give up my favorite foods and I can still have fun. So like all these things are there. And so a lot of people come in the door and they're like, hey, I want to lose weight. And I'm like, okay, are you willing to go through all the hard of self-transformation to do it in a way that is stable and long lasting? So that's kind of the way that I've gone around that kind of stigma, is really rooting into what I believe about it too, and rooting into my own experience, because I know if this solution had been offered to me back when I really needed it in college, I wouldn't be here if it was, but that's what I was really looking for, was
Totally.
someone to do a whole human approach.
That's so wild, because it's almost like when you were going back to get to your therapy, you're like, oh yeah, I'm good. And she's like, all right, can I ask you a few questions? Does it? And then it roped you in. It's almost exactly what you're doing now, except different. You're the mentor, you're the therapist, you're the one leaning in saying, okay, and let me just crack the door of your mind open. And then we can open it slowly as we further understand. And just also like people can stereotype, well, Ellie, you've got a family, you got kids, everything looks perfect. Da, 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 da. It's like, you never really know what's going on. So I encourage everyone to always ask questions, like when it's appropriate, when there's all things for all time, but dig into stuff, be open-minded. And I absolutely love the whole human approach. I actually leaned in and even bought the website of like mind, body, money, nutrition, chiropractic stuff, like everything, because everything impacts everything else. Like there's no one solution. You can address one thing. It all fits together. So I think it's really beautiful and timely that you have this opportunity to address this growing conversation around weight loss. And you have social media where you can now reach out to people, whatever they think about influencers or content creator or what have you. There's accessibility there. There's responsibility as well if you are the coach, mentor, business owner, what have you. But you're clearly someone that's taking responsibility in it and comfortable being on the mic or doing what you're doing and sharing the gospel.
Yeah. Yep. No, I could not have said that better. So, yeah.
It's a wild journey. Again, you can be so intentional and then things are just sort of working out for you. Do you think that you have become, I always thought I was a better lacrosse player when I was coaching, and I was like, God, I probably should have coached earlier on in my collegiate career, like more intentionally. Do you feel like you've gotten better, just maybe even as a human, but just with like health, wellness, awareness now that you are in coaching shoes?
Yeah, for sure. My husband asked me that question a few weeks ago, and I just have this mindset of wanting to go first and being willing to go first, because it is really uncomfortable to stop eating at 75% full. Like it is, there's so much that comes up there with either like being overwhelmed or bored or, whatever it is. And food will always be there, but being willing to sit in the discomfort of the feelings that come up and then make an intentional choice about your next steps, like that. Watching my clients do that is really inspiring. And it definitely inspires me to keep going in my own journey, to say like, okay, I follow my own process, and I have followed it for a while, which is how I developed the confidence to offer it to other people. It helped me lose 40 pounds 3 times postpartum without a lot of drama, which was such a huge shift from being in my young 20s and feeling stuck with 15 that I couldn't lose. And so anyway, yes, it definitely inspires me to be better and to really be present with myself and do as many of the self-care activities as I can each day, with a business, with 3 little kids and life going on, taking a few moments each day, which I encourage my clients to do. I try to do, and it has a big ripple effect. So yeah, that's a great question.
I love it. Well, you're kind of back on a team again. It's totally different when you're doing your own thing, but then like with the whole team's working towards a goal, totally changes the dynamic. And I say once a team athlete, always a team athlete. So once we get back in like our space with our humans, I don't think there's any better place to be working towards something. And I think that in itself impacts your mental health positively. Like you got your team, you got your support system, and you got your people that are like in the trenches with you. And it doesn't have to be the trenches, but like they're in the experience with you. And it's pretty cool to be like, how do you feel? I feel I'm this and this. How about you? This and this. And then like we charge forward.
Yeah. The opportunity to infuse belief into them and to say, hey, like you can do this. You can, what are the reasons why you want to do this? Because I think knowing your why is so important. And then infusing belief to like help them keep going and trust in the long game of the process. Like that is a huge gift to be able to play a small role in someone else's journey to keep going. So I love that you just said that too.
Yeah. Amen. Where do you go? What's like, we'll ask you the ending question is what is success to you? But before that, this might be the same. What's like your next big goal that you want? Or what do you want next for yourself?
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I've almost reached my limit with my client goal. And what I notice is I'm like, okay, if I keep doing more, I'm going to have to put Nora into school 5 days a week, my youngest. And so my goal actually is to be able to feel calm and rest and to feel like, okay, I can trust that my business is moving and I love forward motion. I'm someone like you, like I love creating and watching things move. And I have a hard time sitting in the present sometimes.
Yeah.
And so I would say my next big goal is to be able to like embrace exactly where it is right now and let the next step of my vision expand as Nora enters 5 days a week school in the fall. So for right now, it's like a holding pattern.
Okay.
And being okay with that. My bigger goal is really just to keep filling out my practice. And, I don't know if I'll expand into group coaching. I don't know how the demand will compound over time as I keep showing up online, but I think it'd be really cool to have, either 90-day challenges or maybe a membership down the road where more people can come in at a lower rate and get support that way, and community. So like where my clients right now individually are my team, but to build a team of people together that are like all embracing the same things and hearing each other's fears and worries about following the process of abandoning diet culture, like that would be really cool to witness.
I love it. Is that the same as success to you?
I think success to me used to be a number, like, number on the scale, number in a paycheck, like, those things are kind of linked together. But I think now it's like feeling regulated and present and full of faith in the process and showing up as my most inspired self. Like that really is what success to me kind of is. And then being able to earn an income doing something I'm really passionate about, like that's the ultimate success, I think, where it doesn't even feel like work. So to be regulated in all of that experience, I think is what I view as the highest success.
I love it. Dude, and what a time to be where you're at. Women's sports are taking off and there's conscious health conversation for our young people on TikTok. I mean, the timing couldn't be better for a conversation like this. And I love our disruptors, particularly in the weight loss industry, because there's so much. I mean, it's a multi-billion-dollar industry for a reason. There's a lot of money to be made. And there's very few humans that are doing it from this whole human approach and like, a heart and mind centered versus like just a number on a scale. So if you're out there and you're looking to make any changes positively, obviously, look up Ellie. Ellie, hit us with links, hashtags, anything you want to share where people can find you.
Yeah. So my website is elliemorris-coaching.com, which we can put in the show notes. My Instagram is simply_nourish_W_Ellie. So Simply Nourished with Ellie. So those are the two easiest places to find me. If you're in Denver, I also teach beginner sourdough workshops, and they're an absolute blast. And I do those for a cause. So I always pick something that people who come and buy tickets for are donating towards. And so I love donating in that space and really celebrating bread and whole health living through that. So if you're in Denver, you are welcome to come anytime.
Let's go. I love that. I didn't even know about the give back. That's huge. Well, go check out what Ellie's got going on. Her social media is awesome. I love the in real life classes. I think that's huge. And if you are just curious in any capacity, I would say just go check her out, see her philosophies. I think it's a great entrance into any positive changes you want to make. I think weight loss is really the higher conversation, but really if you're working to change anything, I think that internal approach like Heart and Mind Centered can help kind of shape shift everything else. Like one goal can positively impact whatever it might be. So go check out Ellie. I'm going to give a little love to our sponsors. Thank you to Lux Neuro, Neurofeedback and Counseling. Lux Neuro wants to meet you. If you are ready to transform your life, visit them at luxneuro.com and schedule a consultation. And once again, to Declan James Watches, local veteran owned, 10% kicking back to the Navy SEAL Foundation. We love and support both these humans. Have a great day. Ellie, please keep crushing, and maybe we'll even get our sticks and do a little bit of pass and catch with lacrosse. I don't even know the last time I've played catch. It might look, your kids can make fun of us because we'll probably look like those old ladies that now don't know how to play lacrosse.
I know.
We'll figure it out. But thank you for joining me. Go visit her. Ellie, we'll see you soon in real life.
Yeah, sounds great. Thank you so much for having me. And yes, I still have lacrosse dreams. I think it'd be so fun to play again.
Let's do it. Thanks, Ellie.
Thank you for joining Turmeric and Tequila with your host, Kristen Olson. Tune in next time, and don't forget to subscribe on Apple, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen.